welcome Zachary Lieberman.
Hi, hello, bonjour. So, first of all, I just want to say a huge thank you to the Stereolux people for having us and for all of you for coming. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be here, and I'm super excited to talk to you about openFrameworks and really for this community to come together. So it's a kind of, it's a dream to be here, so I'm super excited. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about openFrameworks, and then I'm going to talk to you about my own work and some stuff that I'm doing really recently. Quickly, the main idea or the goal behind openFrameworks is to create this tool where you don't necessarily have to have a computer science degree. So in English we say CS degree. The goal is to create this library, this tool where you don't really have to come from CS background to make crazy things. And I teach, and one of the things that I really like to teach is that it's not as hard as it looks. So when you see these projects, that we can take them apart and we can talk about how they're made and we can make new ones. And the goal is really to use this as a tool for making, but also a tool for teaching. We take these things and we share them with other people. So I'll show you some projects that are made with openFrameworks. Oh, sorry. Oh no, okay. Sorry. openFrameworks, that's easy. Tell you a little bit about the philosophy behind openFrameworks. These are the things that I think make up the openFrameworks projects: is simplicity, intuitiveness, distributed, cross-platform, powerful, and extensible. So I'm going to explain these words. Simplicity. When I think about openFrameworks, I think about it basically as a kind of set of building blocks. It's these small pieces of code that we can reuse to build new things. When you go to the bookstore, if you go to, in America we have a bookstore that Barnes & Noble, we go to, and if you look in the computer section, there's tons and tons of books, right? If you look in C++, it's very overwhelming to see all of these books. And for us, it's really like, we try to create this thing where you don't need to read all of these books, but maybe just a couple. It's designed to be intuitive, so that to do a very basic thing like load a movie and play it and draw it, it's just a few lines of code. It's not a lot of code. It's distributed, and it's really beautiful to see kind of how, if you look at this network diagram of how openFrameworks is created, there's like so many contributors from around the world, people adding to and making this project. All of these people kind of being a part of this tool. It's cross-platform, which means it works in Windows and Mac and Linux, and also on devices like iOS and Android and Raspberry Pi embedded devices. And now recently it's been working with mscripting, so it can also work in the browser, which is really exciting because you can have, write openFrameworks code and then see it in a browser. And then recently I got a browser working in openFrameworks. So I had openFrameworks working in the browser in openFrameworks. And it's a bit like that movie Inception. So it had this kind of cool Inception quality. It's powerful, and it's extensible. And one of the most exciting things about openFrameworks are all of the add-ons. So we have this core set of code, but then people are writing all of these additional pieces of code that, if there's a new device or a new library, people are writing wrappers that allow you to easily use them. And for me, that's one of the most exciting things, is to see all of this code that other people are writing. And if you look at the actual lines of code, it's like 25 or now maybe 30 times the number of lines of code for add-ons versus the core of OF, which means that it's like 25 times the size. It's like a huge scale. In the openFrameworks community, we're really big advocates for this idea of making poems instead of demos. So usually when you think of technology, you think of a demo. Like it's like a cool, shiny thing. Like here's a cool use of technology. And we're really big advocates for poems, for poetry, for creating something that's maybe more, kind of weird and esoteric. So I'm going to show you some projects that I think really represent kind of openFrameworks and kind of important for the history. And this is a project that was created by Graffiti Research Lab, including my friend Theo Watson, who works with us on openFrameworks. This project is called Laser Tag. And the idea is that it combines projectors, camera, computer, and really bright illegal lasers. And you can point this at a building and you can make drawings. And so the camera is tracking the green dot of the laser. And then the software is actually making a drawing based on the movement of the laser. Oh no, why are my videos not playing? Oh no, what does that mean? Ah! Okay. Wow. Sorry, everybody. Okay, go ahead.
The laser what you are using there is the letters laser, that means light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. Ah, yeah. Oh, ah, yeah. Ah, yeah. Ah, yeah. Pass me the laser beam. I make me wipe up the wicked and clean. Pass me the laser beam. I make me wipe up the wicked and clean. Them I come with them challenges, but I know that's the problem. Them I come with them 45, but I say we got to survive. They're coming on the scene, but they've got to be clean. Don't bring your M16, I mean we drop them in laser beam. So, pass me the laser beam.
Okay, I love that song so much. All right, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna quit. Oh, duplicate. File doesn't exist. What does that even mean? Discard? Duplicate? Oh, none of my videos play. All right, well, I'll just use my words. So one of the things that I find really beautiful about this project is that, you go to the website and if you go to Vimeo or YouTube or Flickr or Instagram, every day you search for openFrameworks, you see all of these great projects that people are making. And that's kind of beautiful thing about making a tool is seeing the things that people make from it. This is one of my favorite projects when I'm talking about the idea of poetry. This is by an artist named Chris Segru. And she's created this project called Delicate Boundaries. And it's basically a screen, a computer screen. And when you put your hand next to it, there are these bugs that are moving on the screen. And when you put your hand next to the screen, the bugs actually come off the screen onto your hand. And we always talk about artwork leaving the screen. And this is such a beautiful example of artwork actually coming off of the screen and interacting with your body. Oh, no, nothing plays. Okay, I will describe it. So this is a project called Sniff, and it's a virtual dog where when you approach the window, the dog is following you. And as you move in front of the storefront, the dog kind of is attracted to you and then sometimes backs away. It's quite beautiful. It's created by an artist named Carolina Sebeka. We've been using openFrameworks at a place called iBeam, which is an art science research center. Oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna try. Discard or duplicate? What does that even mean? Oh God. Oh man. Okay. Discard. Oh Yeah. Open. Oh, I understand it now. Okay, I understand it. Okay. Yeah. All right. Wow. I'm an idiot. How do you say idiot in French? Idiot? Idiot. I'm an idiot. Idiot. Okay. Wow. Oh. Okay. Okay. Idiot. Okay. All right. Wonderful. Okay. Oh, whoa. Oh no, keynotes. Oh my god. Okay. Oh no. Okay. Oh, this is not working out. All right, let's try this again. Done. Keynote. Open recent. Open frameworks. Waiting for movies to convert. Cancel. Okay. All right. Oh yay. Okay, now I can show you videos. Oh, maybe not. Oh. Okay. All right. Well, this is an augmented reality record. This is a project which I. Oh. Okay. Well. Oh yes. Okay. So this is a project which I love. It's a video game called Lose Lose. And this video game is actually, the characters in this video game are based on files from your hard drive. So when you shoot them, it deletes that file on your hard drive. And then when you die, it deletes the game itself. And so I like this game. It's called Lose Lose. So no matter what, you lose. This is a.
Hey, this is Theo Watson. This is a little app I made this morning as a response to Todd Van's augmented reality record player.
So Theo, who works with us on openFrameworks, saw this augmented reality record, and he got all excited about it. So he made this app.
So check it out.
And people ask, why are you interested as an artist? What intrigues you about open source? And why would you take this code and give it away to other people? And for me, I think a lot about this question. And my answer is that usually when you tell people that you're making art, they have this notion of, people have a kind of romantic notion of what it means to be an artist. So that an artist is somebody who's like working alone, is a solitary genius, who's misunderstood and working alone in an attic. And I think that we need to really fight against this notion. And I'm a big advocate of this idea that art is a kind of laboratory. It's a form of research. And that really what we're researching is the future. That we're developing or inventing, different possible futures. So there's a huge movement right now, this kind of DIY, do-it-yourself. And in the openFrameworks community, we have this notion of DIWO, do it with others. And I like this idea of, we can do things, we can make things with other people. So this is a cartoon that I used to watch as a kid where everybody comes together and then becomes a Voltron. And it's really amazing to see this kind of openFrameworks community grow. And I think if you have a community, you have to have a gang sign. So we have this openFrameworks gang sign. And I think everybody gets it, except for... she has trouble. And we do all kinds of events where we try to come together and make things together. So this was at Ars Electronica. We created a laboratory. They said, you know, could you make something with openFrameworks? And we said, let's make a laboratory. So we actually built out of scaffolding, we built a whole structure, a whole place. We had this idea of making a research laboratory for the course of the festival that we built. And it was quite nice to build this thing, like a physical construction out of scaffolding. And so see it come together, multiple levels. And then we had our friend Tae-Yoon Choi, who's a great artist, created the visuals for the outside of this structure. And the idea is that we basically hung out in here, and it was 2 floors. So on the first floor, you could see kind of photographs and documentation of what we made. And the idea here is that there was this whiteboard. So here you can see a kind of whiteboard where you can write notes on. And so people would write down ideas for us on the whiteboard, just using 5 words. They would just write down 5 words. And then they would take a photograph. We had this photo booth where you would take a photograph of yourself holding these 5 words. And then those 5 words would actually come up. We'd print it out, and there was a hole in the ceiling here where you'd pass the idea through. So on the ground floor, you kind of generate an idea, and then you pass it up to the second floor. And in the second floor, we had this kind of great laboratory, and there were security cameras, so you could see us working. You could kind of watch us. And on the second floor, we were hanging out, and we basically raided Ars Electronica. We stole all of their equipment and anything that we could find. We sort of grabbed it and put it in a room. And then we had these beanbag chairs, and there's the hole in the floor. So you actually would fall asleep, and then an idea would come up, and then you'd wake up, and then you'd go jam and make something. And we took this idea of research really seriously. We hung out, we made projects, we kind of jammed, we drank a lot of beer. And I think coding and drinking beer goes really well together. We wore lab coats, so we actually looked like we were in a research lab. And what I love is just the idea that if we're in the same space, the ideas can travel and share more easily. This is one of the projects. So we made dozens and dozens of projects. This is one that I love, which is a Super Mario Brothers that you play with your body. So it was a lot of this kind of work, but I think the most important thing to say about openFrameworks is that it's a tool, but it's also a community, and it's a really kind of welcoming and friendly community. Let's see. Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about some projects that I've been making recently with openFrameworks. So I've worked as a media artist for a long time now. I think I showed a project here at Scopitone in 2007 or 2008, so I'm like, I feel like not like a grandfather now. So I've done a lot of projects. I'm going to show you some recent stuff that I'm really excited about. So this is a tool that I made in the summertime called Inkspace. It's an Android app, so you can run it on your phone. And it's basically a drawing tool where you can make a drawing on the phone, and then when you rotate the phone, the drawing rotates in 3D. Again, what I love about making tools is you see, I put this app out, and then you see all of these drawings that people make, and it's really fun to kind of watch what people make with the things that you've made. Sometimes it's like really basic stuff, like drawing faces and and so on. Sometimes it's really fun messages, like this kind of thing. And then sometimes it's really cool. Like there's this artist who made these birds. She made this whole series of birds, and it was really beautiful to see. Like I could not imagine making it, but you put the tool out there, and then you see all of the things that people do. For me, that's really exciting. Another project that I had the pleasure to work on recently is called the School for Poetic Computation. And Sarah was a student recently at the school, and you can see the great work that she made there. But this is a school that we started in New York. And we recently had a commission to make an artwork for a music festival this December. And what we did is we designed a project. It's called Recoded, and it's inspired by another project called the Recode Project. But the basic idea is that we took 5 artists from the past, and we studied their work, and we recreated their work using modern tools. So artists like Vera Molnar, James and John Whitney, Muriel Cooper, Rosa Menkman, and there's a 5th one. It will come to me. So this is the School for Poetic Computation. We don't really have a fancy logo. But we hang out there, we make stuff, and the exciting thing was actually kind of, for me, to take students from the school, to take them to another place. So we went to Houston, Texas, and we flew down, and we hung out, and all of the gear, when we got to the music festival, all of our stuff just said poetic on it. Somebody wrote the word poetic on tape, just to mark it as ours. And basically, it were 2 giant LED screens that our sketches were running on them. And so on the left side, you could see the code, and on the right side, you could see the result of the code. And this was really fun. We set this up. We had tons and tons of visitors. I'm going to show you just a quick video so you can see kind of what I mean by the code and the visuals. So the idea is that the room would be completely pitch dark, and then you would actually see the code being written, and then you would see the visual on the right side. And we really wanted to show how changes in the code affect the visuals. So we built a system where you could adjust a particular value, and then you could see that value changing in the visuals. And for non-programmers, it was quite nice to kind of meditate and see this very direct relationship between text and image. And it was also, for us, really wonderful to study these artists and get to know their work and their ideas and try to bring them to a more modern audience. So we set this up and exhibited this project. I love, the LED screens are so bright, so people actually wore sunglasses in the room. And it was really kind of great to be, I love this image, this is what it felt like. And people were just sitting and hanging out. And yeah, I'm really excited about this kind of projects. I'll show you a few more things that I've been working on. So really kind of small stuff. I've been thinking a lot about reflection. So I started with some sketches. We're really just talking to a student. And the student was thinking about circles. And this is a sketch that I coded for them, which is drawing a circle with a very simple idea, which is if you take a line from one side of the screen and connect it with one of the 3 other sides of the screen, if it intersects the circle in the middle, don't draw it. But if it doesn't, draw it. So this is a way of drawing a circle almost as a kind of approximation, lots of lines to create that circle. And this got me thinking just about lines and what they could do. So I started thinking about, could I do typography? Like I started putting letters in there. That didn't work. I tried a smiley face. That didn't work very well. But that got me thinking about reflection. And I started writing code, and the first code that I wrote was actually wrong. Like I couldn't figure out how to do reflection, but I was thinking about sort of how light works and how you might reflect lines. And this got me really excited. I started to do all kinds of experiments. And I've been thinking a lot about reflection and light and also refraction and how you might use them in a kind of creative way. So I created this project for this music festival in Houston where it's basically using a light table with lots of shapes. So these are just plexiglass shapes that you can rearrange. And then we're projecting a simulation of light. What would it look like if lights were actually bouncing off of those shapes on the side of a building? And it was really fun for me, so I've just been kind of thinking a lot about light and how you might simulate light, and then to build this tool for people to come and kind of jam and experiment with this virtual light. For me, it was really interesting to sort of see what people make. And I'm a really big fan of projects that are kind of open-ended and people can bring their creativity to. So here with these shapes, people were drawing and writing messages, and you know, it was quite fun to watch what people do. And I really like light. I'm thinking a lot about light, and you know, so mostly just kind of thinking about how can I simulate light, and you know, what would it look like to have light moving around and kind of interacting with these shapes. And that has brought me to, in 2016, I started to do daily sketches. So I'm really getting interested in this idea of coding daily and trying to make something that I can share with the world. So it started with actually January 1st. So I was like, oh, I want to do a New Year's card. I always think about New Year's and how can I say Happy New Year's to people. So that was my first sketch, was like thinking of, you know, saying Happy New Year's. And then I've just been jamming, thinking about light and reflection. So every day, kind of wake up, and usually like I exercise and then I code for an hour and just try to make a sketch for people to share. Thinking about, again, this light and reflection, doing lots of studies with typography. So every day just trying to think of something new, like what can I do, you know. To me, it's kind of nice. It's like saying hello. It's like a little hello to everybody. Sometimes very simple, like I really am inspired by kind of these simple ideas, like, you know, very graphical ideas. And then, you know, just experiments using the same word over and over again, but just trying to see it in a new way. Sometimes very basic. So here, just very simple geometry and not a lot of beams of light, but if you just let them bounce a lot, you get these crazy patterns. So for me, it was like almost this kind of discovery, you know, just coding and kind of discovering on a daily basis. Sometimes it's a little more wild. So these were blobs that light is kind of bouncing in and out of. More geometry studies. And then, you know, some stuff, I have no idea what's going on. I just am playing and kind of experimenting. And it's fun. It's either, you have two things. You either have light or you have a wall. Right? That's all there is. There's walls and there's light. I started to think about refraction, and first experiments with this was all wrong, but it looked cool. So I shared it with people. But then really thinking on what does it look like if light is refracting on shapes, and that, you know, suggested some interesting ideas. This is refraction through some multiple triangles. Refraction on a blob. Refraction and reflection, so sort of alternating between refraction and reflection. This is a bit of both, refraction and reflection. And then I got really, so I'm super tired. I've been doing these reflection studies for a couple weeks, and I really miss color. So I got very frustrated from just seeing black and white all the time. So, and I'm inspired by this film. See if I can find this. Oh, here. So this is an amazing film by a Canadian animator named Norman McLaren called Dots. So I was thinking about this film, and I was thinking, you know, how can we code something that looks like this, that has this kind of quality? So I've been experimenting recently. In the last couple days, I've been experimenting with blobs. So just making forms that are more like kind of weird and curvy and a little bit amorphous. And how do you light them, or how do you shade them so they look interesting? So every day I kind of wake up now and I do blobs. So I was thinking about light before, now I'm thinking about blobs. And I don't know, next week I might be thinking about something else. But it's been really beautiful to kind of every day just wake up and just say hello to people and make a sketch every day and just use that as a way of saying hi. The last thing that I've been really excited about, and then I'm going to pass it to some other people, is that I teach. For many years I was a professor, and I love when you're teaching as a student and also as a teacher. I love this idea of open office hours. So it's the notion that your professor says, come by, you have a problem, we can talk about it. But it's just saying, I'm available to talk. And so when the school is not in session, I really miss that. I miss actually just talking to people and just hearing about projects that people are working on. And I find that if people are curious, that curiosity is really infectious. That if they're curious, that I also become curious. So I created this open office hours. Every week, I take one afternoon, and I say, on Twitter or Facebook, I say, if you want to talk to me, come find me. And so my friend made this thing, so it's like Charlie Brown has this doctor, you know, as I said, the doctor is in. So for me, it's like free media art advice. And it's been really good. I've done it for 2 weeks now. I'm going to do the third week coming up when I come back from Nantes on the weekend. But I found it really amazing to have both people that I know and people that I don't know reach out and just spend time talking to them. And for me, that's like one of the most exciting things I've been doing recently, is actually just talking to people. So I'm now like weekly trying to do this, and encourage all of you to come find me for my open office hours. I'm really excited. The last thing to say is really welcome. I'm excited that we can be here jamming, making things with openFrameworks, talking about creative code, and just, if you're not a part of the community, I just want to say welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zach. It was really fascinating. So now please welcome Kyle. You've seen his work during Scopiton, the last edition, and an artist we like very much here. So it's to you.
Hey everybody, thank you Zach for that awesome presentation. I want to say thank you too for having me, and I get a chance to lead this workshop tomorrow. It's going to be great. Is anyone coming to learn about computer vision? Some people? A couple people. Well, maybe by the end of this you'll be more interested. My name's Kyle, and I just wanted to share two sort of directions in my work over the last few years. I'm an artist, and you might have seen this kind of weird project I was working on at Scopiton with Daito Manabe and Klaus Obermeier. This is kind of a, think about a 30-minute performance that's full of a bunch of different vignettes between some dancers, and some of them are kind of body-oriented like this, and others are more face-oriented, and a lot of it's about like the relationship between the mind and the body, and breaking that down with weird technologies in a kind of theater dance context. But now, I'm here to talk about computer vision tomorrow, so I thought I'd say that was kind of something I spent a few years trying to get kind of technically good at, so I could maybe make some artwork that was different than other kinds of interaction that I'd seen before. One of the first chances I had to do that was working with Theo Watson on a project called Portrait Machine, where we were matching portraits together. So when you stand in front of it, it would show you similar portrait to someone who had previously stood there. And around that time, about 2009, I started getting excited about 3D scanning because the Kinect wasn't around yet, and the idea of like a 3D scanning camera was kind of novel and seemed like a good challenge. So I found out that you can make a 3D scanner with just like a camera and a projector, which seemed kind of crazy. So I put one together and started making 3D scans and experimenting with what the aesthetic looked like and how to make more glitches or less glitches. And from working on that, I learned a bunch about how to connect kind of projectors and cameras to automatically scan things, whether it's a 3D shape, like a person, or whether it's like light bouncing off a mirror. And it sounds kind of esoteric at first, but, well, I guess it is. But after I got kind of really deep into the technique, then I started to have ideas for other things that I wouldn't have thought of otherwise if I was just, you know, kind of sitting in my bed with my sketchbook, brainstorming ideas. I might not have come up with some of these unless I had the kind of technical background of experimenting with these technologies. So one of the next projects I made was using these same 3D scanning techniques to scan all of the reflections off of some mirror balls in the center of a room. So we had three, this is a project with Jonas Youngyan in 2012, I think, called Light Leaks. And so we had 50 mirror balls in the middle of the room and 3 projectors pointed at the mirror balls. So all these reflections on the wall are light bouncing off the mirror balls and hitting the wall. And if you wanted to, you can imagine going to each pixel on the projector and putting a single white pixel there, and then making a note like, okay, 500, 112. That pixel is mapped to this position in the space. So we wrote some code to like project a lot of patterns, and then automatically figure out where that light was ending up in the room in 3D. And that gave us a chance to use all of those reflections like a big display, like an LED screen. And it's really nice being in this kind of space because all of your peripheral vision is totally encompassed with whatever is on the screen right now, or whatever's in the space. So you kind of lose your sense of like orientation. So if everything moves like this, you kind of almost fall over because you don't really have a reference point. I'm interested in these like new ways of seeing and new ways of creating spaces that maybe weren't possible 10 years ago, and finding out like how does it change our perception of things. This was a project with Arturo Castro called face substitution, and I wonder, do I have any other faces here? Maybe not. Maybe I just have Daito. No other faces. This is maybe another example of like an application of computer vision that normally the people who are using computer vision are like governments and defense agencies and corporations, and they have like a very commercial purpose or very political purpose in mind. So when artists get their hands on these technologies, sometimes they come up with things that don't necessarily have an application like that, but they're kind of inspiring or make you curious or make you laugh or make you excited. I think any of these things are just as valuable, and that one didn't really work. It looks really weird. So when people like me and Arturo and Zach and Elliot and Sarah, when we're all working with these technologies, we tend to discover like these little interstitial areas of things like computer vision, applications that people who are non-artists might not have discovered, and then I'll try and kind of craft them into being part of an installation. So with this one, we made a piece. Arturo and I made a piece where you walk up to a screen and you see yourself, but then after you blink, it replaces your face with someone else's, and it's a really strange moment between blinking and then realizing it's someone else's face. Because you don't notice for that second or two that it's actually someone else's face. It takes a moment for you to kind of viscerally understand it. And there's like a moment of like your body image, your personal body image being kind of modified, which I find really interesting. This one was with Golan Levin and Chris Chagru 2 years ago. Very simple box. This is the box you put your hand in. This is called Augmented Hand Series. But after you put your hand in, it starts doing strange things to your hand. This was inspired by some kind of creepy hands that Golan saw when he was a kid in a museum. And I think it's been in his brain ever since, the idea of like making something that turns your hand into those creepy hands. I think sometimes good art can kind of collapse the boundary between like how you see yourself and how you see other people, or how you see your body and how you see other bodies, or maybe just make you laugh a little bit. And I think this one does a little bit of all those things. I really like watching some of the kids respond to this, and oh, this is more demos. But I really like watching some kids respond to this, and then sometimes they'll kind of peek inside the box, like, yeah, like this. Like, really? Is that for real? Yeah, here, this is some more, maybe clearer video of what's going on. We tried to, so this is using a lot of the same things that I was learning, like working on other computer vision projects, things about blending and tracking objects, and we tried to make it as seamless as possible, because it's not always the case. It's not always the case that you need something to be like, to look perfect. Sometimes just suggesting it is enough. But in this case, I think for the illusion to be really complete and for it to feel as weird as we wanted it to feel, it took a lot of kind of hard technical work. So the other half of what I wanted to share was kind of a new direction that I've been going in for the last year or so. Instead of new ways of seeing with computer vision, it's more like new ways of thinking. It's a lot of machine learning and kind of crowdsourcing. One of the first projects I did maybe 2 or 3 years ago that used crowdsourcing was, it looked like this. It was called Conversnitch, and it was a lamp that I put together with Brian House, another artist, and we installed it around New York, where the microphone broadcasts conversations to Twitter, basically. We installed it anywhere that we could find a light socket, and it looks approximately like a light bulb. It looks kind of like a lamp in some places. Other places it looks really out of place. But basically it records the conversations and then posts them to this website called Mechanical Turk, where a human gets paid some small amount of money, maybe 25 cents, to take a 10-second recording and then say, you know, this is what I heard, this is what someone was saying in that recording. And then we post directly to Twitter from Mechanical Turk. This might look like me, but it's definitely not me. So the end result is this Twitter account, Conversnitch, which just has hundreds of tweets, and it kind of shut down like the summer before last, because I'm not sure, we kind of lost track of the lamp. Someone might have done something to it, but we haven't really been able to track it down. So if you have any leads on the location of Conversnitch, please let me know. Yeah, I really like just reading through there and seeing, like, just make toast or something. I asked Michael why he did it. He know. People do get better. Some of it's really like personal and intimate, and then other stuff is like totally mundane, and I like that kind of chaos between those two that happens just in daily life. I think it's great to see life as this kind of performance happening around you, and any artwork that can reframe it that way, I really appreciate. Another project that's kind of in that vein of kind of crowdsourcing and reframing life as art is inspired by, it's called Exhausting a Crowd. It's inspired by this book from a French author, whose name can't pronounce correctly. But this was written, I think in the 70s, in 72 maybe, in Paris. He sat on a bench for 3 days with his journal, and he just wrote, this is the English translation, sorry, he wrote everything that was happening in front of him. So things like, you know, the cafe is full, a child is taking his dog for a run, looks like Snowy. I like that he makes up some kind of name for the dog, or maybe it's a reference to a dog that he knows. A 63 passes by. He really gets very precise about keeping track of all of the different buses that are passing by, because it becomes this like rhythm, this thing that like you start to notice when you're just sitting in a space, and it kind of frames your appreciation of the space. 2 men with pipes and black satchels, a man with a black satchel and no pipe, and then you start seeing, you know, one thing framed in terms of another thing. When I read this, I thought it reminded me a lot of like what happens online with comments, what happens online with like threads where people are discussing a topic and all providing their own insight into it. And I thought it would be nice to create like a modern retelling of the same piece. And I went to, and so then I worked with the V&A Museum in London to create this piece, Exhausting a Crowd, using 12 hours of footage from Piccadilly Circus in London. And you can see, text might be a little hard to read, but I'll zoom in. Let's see what's happening. Anything? Oh snap, it's a Russian act casual. Just got back from Colorado, dude. You're not Flower 14 from that chat, right? Whoa. There's a lot that's automatically removed, but some stuff still sneaks in sometimes, so I have to be careful. It's me and Mom's car, vroom vroom. $53 bus, run. It's kind of amazing. Here, I'll show you a trick. Don't post this anywhere. Oh wait, no, I did it wrong. You can skip to different points in time. Oh, we just hit 3. Perfect. This is what I was going to do anyway. So it's kind of synced to your local time. So right now it's 3 p.m. here. You see 3 p.m. on the video. It goes from 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. Some people are just causing problems and like saying, I'm a fly, I'm a bee. And other people are leaving like really insightful notes that are sort of like thoughts that people are thinking or observations about what's happening. Okay, I'm going to show you, hold on, I'm going to show you my one excerpt that I really love, which is like my favorite excerpt from Exhausting a Crowd. So after the first day that the site was online, this showed up. It's this couple walking around at night. It says to Mabel, Mabel, wait, look over there. Kiss me, you fool. What, right here, right now? Yes, right on the lips. It's so perfect. And then recently, people started adding a lot more comments. So that first one that we just saw, one person wrote the first 3, I think, comments, and then someone else saw that, and they started adding more comments. So now there's like a couple kissing, yes, right on the list. How do I get her back to my flat? And it starts getting kind of questionable, like, hand placed like a gentleman. Someone's really looking closely. Hand lower now. Or like I just did a new iteration in Amsterdam, or in the Netherlands. There's this great scene with this baby walking around. So with so I think kind of crowdsourced appreciation of things is kind of a new way of thinking. It's something we've all gotten used to with social media, but there's still some ways to step back and like see it as an intelligence of its own. maybe that's one kind of intelligence, and another one is this, the way that machine learning is changing right now. It's through new technology like deep learning, there's some more opportunities to understand complex media like images and text that was not really possible before. And maybe you've seen some applications like this. Has anyone seen this picture before? A couple people? Okay. So there's some stuff that's coming out of deep learning, like Deep Dream, or like experiments with transferring the style from a painting to an image, like putting a sort of abstract style on an animation, for example. But it's all based on this much simpler idea, which is like, how do we label things? So I'm interested, I don't know if you can see that, it says iPod at the top, which is about right. But I'm interested in this more fundamental idea of like, what happens when we're asking computers to think for us? What kind of biases are we imbuing in them? And what sort of new ways of appreciating the world can we extract from that new intelligence? Maybe it can help us sort of, maybe it can provide a lens through which we look through cultural artifacts, or a new tool for performance, or I don't know, I'm just starting to get into it, so I don't really know yet where I'm going. But I've been working on a few experiments, and just yesterday I flew from Japan, where I was working on visualizing this archive of media art from a professor named Ituo Sakane, who has about 800 hours of mini DV tapes that he's been recording for the last 30 years. So whenever he's gone to like an Ars Electronica or a conference or any festival or exhibition, he's just been recording the whole time. Even there's some that are just like him getting dinner with people, and he just has the recorder on the table. So I'm starting to use these techniques, like the deep learning techniques, to try and understand and classify these tapes in collaboration with Rhizomatics, which is a studio in Japan, and a few other people. Yusuke Tomoto is helping with some of the deep learning. And you can see there's a bunch of kind of funny artifacts that come out of this, like all of the faces get classified in one similar area. There's like a little section for this is some of the anime section, I guess. All of the white on black text gets put in the same place. These are all slides, basically. People giving presentations and credits and stuff like that. Sometimes it groups by color. All the sunsets are over here. And from watching all this footage, I've started to get like a new appreciation for, I don't know, just the history of media art and understanding kind of where new technologies fall into this timeline, and how different people have approached integrating those technologies into their practice. Or I'm thinking maybe from a more like a performative side. Let's see if the sound works here. Yeah. This is my favorite area right over here. I want to make music that I could never have even imagined, not even making, but just even listening to. And I think as I experiment with more of these techniques, I'm discovering like those things that I wouldn't have considered otherwise. Like I was showing light leaks earlier, I wouldn't have imagined that without having some appreciation of like what's going on with computer vision and 3D scanning. And so this is basically, I just wanted to share my practice. This is like how I've been working for the last few years, and some of the experiments I've been making. What does it say? A cell phone. Drinking from a wine glass. Yeah, suit and a tie. Yeah, maybe it knows about hoodies. Maybe a glass of wine is for later. So I'll just finish with this one. This is a new experiment, which is about using image labeling, kind of like the single labels that we were looking at earlier, but it's this technique is better at generating sentences to describe things. And we'll see where this one goes next. I'm not sure yet. So if any of this looks interesting, please stop by the workshop tomorrow, computer vision, and happy to hang out and explain some of these things to you in more technical detail. So talk to you soon. Thanks again.
Hey. I'm Elliot. I've been here a couple of times. I did a talk 2 years ago. Was anybody at that, which is like next door? A couple of people? I'm going to presume you all were, so I'm going to keep out all the projects which were in that talk and just talk about a couple of things that happened since then. We were told we were supposed to talk 15 minutes, so I'm going to see how that goes. Okay, I'm from an art studio called Kimchi and Chips, and we're two people, and we have two very different approaches to the kind of matter of adapting the physical reality to create artistic expressions. So we are working with technology, which is like light and computation, but also with physical materials to play with what really is material, what is really physical, and that kind of perception boundary, that thing about being human, of understanding the phenomena of the world from the perspective of a human, and how that's changing mostly in a physical way. Okay, so we have a studio in Seoul in South Korea, and sometimes it looks a bit like this, and sometimes, like when we're setting up something, it's a bit more of a mess, right? And this mirrors the general practical approach we have to our projects. There's something that's physical, that's material, which is a channel through which the computers and the audience experience each other. So on one side of this, we have all this technology, which is kind of like where also the audience is, and then we have, on the other side, we have this kind of material, which is a channel through which we pass the artistic experience. And a lot of our works, as Kyle mentioned about his previous works, work with scanning the physical environment. So we need to kind of calibrate the way in which we're adjusting the world with our technologies. So we kind of have a scanning stage and then some kind of augmentation happening. So a really early example of that was this project called Lit Tree, which we have a physical tree, and we project light into it, so all these different pixels are landing in different places, and similar to what was going on with light leaks, we're recovering the location of those pixels in order to construct images. So in this case, because the tree is nebulous, all these pixels are landing in different places around inside the tree, and we're able to construct 3D shapes, 3D forms inside of that cloud of pixels that we now have control of. And also with this project, there's a second kind of effect of this, which is the light is obviously triggering the growth of the tree. So the tree is in this dark environment, and the only light that's available to it is that which gets fed to it from the projector. So over the duration of the exhibition, its shape adapts to wherever light has been sent to it. So part of the, so we kind of embellished that by creating this relationship where people could reach in and have their hand mirrored as a kind of 3D cloud of light inside the tree to create a conversation between you and the natural, this phototropic entity in the most immediate way. So you could kind of talk to a tree, perhaps, through something which it can react to quickly. And these projects, we talk about something called semi-materiality, which is things which are in the physical world and have some physical properties and some non-physical properties, usually something like a digital property. So physical property would be like, okay, it's genuine, it's measurable, it's familiar, it's human, it's touchable, and digital might be that it's mutable, it's changeable, it's copyable, it's deletable. And we have kind of one way of measuring like what the nature of these materials are, which is what we call the aesthetic of error, which is a concept from physics. Well, in physics, error means like how well something is defined. So the limit to which it exists, beyond which there is nothing, right? So like if you think about like measuring this table, there's a point to which where it doesn't actually make sense to measure it anymore, because actually you have all the information that exists in the universe about that table, right? There is no more information to be had. And if you bring this back to art and design, there's a limit to how well you can design the table, which to any kind of well, there's a limit to how well you can design the table, and beyond that limit is the material itself. So the threshold between design and material is this limit, which we call the error. And what's the aesthetic of that boundary between the two? So in new materials, like, well, in old materials like photo, that was the grain in the photograph, right? The grain of a photo would show you no longer what was intended by the image, but the personality of the material itself. And this is true also of new materials. So we have this kind of catchy line. Well, it's not so catchy, but we have this line, 3 lines. Ego of the media is demonstrated through the vernacular of its deterioration. So the accent, the way in which it deteriorates, the attitudes of that deterioration demonstrate the identity of the material. Okay, so I haven't got much time. I'm going to skip through some projects. This project we didn't show last time, so I'm kind of putting it in here. It's a project about analog television and how for roughly like 5 to 8 generations, actually I should make that number up, it's probably not true, but between the 40s and like about 10 years ago, TV, the standard for the television image hadn't changed. Right? There was like a standard for analog TV, maybe they added color and a few other features, but in the end it was 483 lines. So you'd see all the major events since the Second World War would be represented always in the same image format, right? So it's kind of a goodbye to that image format. Now we're getting a new one and things are changing a lot. But it's to say, okay, during all that time, everything which might have been important to you outside of what you could have experienced in a moving format yourself by being there would have been experienced through these lines. So these installations are very time-consuming processes of constructing something physical. And did anyone see the installation in Skopjeton 2 years ago? We had with the strings, some of you? Okay, so we have this very nebulous network of strings hanging in the air, which is projected onto. Following that project, we went in this different direction, making everything very regimented and ordered. So it starts with this analog TV image, we blow it up so it's 16 meters wide, and then we fold it 15 times so it fits into the gallery space. But also because we have these folds, we've now got this thickness, and we have a depth into which we can draw, so we can start to draw into 3D space using this also. Do I have audio? So often with our works, we're developing a canvas which uses technology inside of it, and we're working with that canvas to create something visual. This is the second version of the project, which just opened in South Korea. Okay. We've worked a lot with this motif of a sphere or a circle, or also the moon. Mostly because it's kind of like we're talking about making something physical that's between this realm of digital and physical. And the most simple form in the physical world, when you're talking about physics, usually is a sphere. But also, there's this idea of like looking out at the moon. The moon is this thing which kind of reflects what the nature of the Earth is. You're seeing it in the sky, and it's the only thing in the natural sky that you can see directly, which shows what shape the Earth is, right? It's like you can see the nature of a solar system by looking at the moon. Anyway, so we have this project which is trying to render moons into space by using wind and fabric. So we call this a wind painting. And as the fabric passes through, it like just blowing on the rooftop here of our studio, and it's just blowing in the wind, and we're tracking it with a 3D camera. And as it passes through this virtual moon, we're sending projection to that intersection. So over a long period of time, if you take a long exposure photograph of that, you'll capture all of those moments of time together in that long exposure photograph. So you render the moon to the image. I'm interested in playing with this concept in areas, in locations which have some kind of absence. So here is an incinerator where you burn trash, right? And it was decommissioned about 5 years ago, and we wanted to play around with, there's this huge absence in this place because it's this enormous, brutal building, which is kind of emptied of all its purpose. So we're kind of bringing something back into there. And one thing we found in general was, if you want to make something visible in the world, you have to give it a surface. Like the way our eyes work is that you've got a line that comes out of your eye, and it continues until it hits the surface, right? And this leads to this general principle that if you want to make something visible, it has to be given a surface. So what we do is we're giving this moon a surface which travels through space, and the surface is the boundary between this virtual and physical world. So here is just this is the video of us moving the fabric. Then afterwards there's a little simulation which shows what would happen if that was a long exposure. So here it's kind of adding these frames together as the fabric progresses. So you can kind of get how the moon is occurring, right? So this was kind of a bit of a messy job. It was so this place, like I said, it hadn't been used for years, and it's just full of dust and rubbish. So it was like working 20-hour days for a week to clean it out and then install all these bits of fabric. We worked on 3 different locations to try and reactivate, like where people were walking and standing, where there was this kind of air purification. So there's like a lot of kind of steam and activity in here, and the bunker itself where all the trash was being kept. And this was rather than it being an installation project, as all of others are, this one was a photography project. But we also wanted to have for the audience to be able to see this fabric. So for the final flag, we dropped it down into the bunker. Let's get through this. then here there's like there's air being brought into the building. So we're pumping air from outside that's kind of the new air going to refresh the building as it gets reborn as an art centre, which is what is going to happen afterwards. Also, it's quite necessary to pump a building full of new air when it's had trash in it for a really long time. And then you'd see this at the exhibition, there was a balcony at which you could see the fabric moving, and there's the kind of tracking camera and projectors which are hitting it, and then there's the photographs. Okay, I'm just going to talk about one more project, which we hadn't done when we came last time, so I can probably spend all of that one. So we started with the Impressionists and their obsession with light, and we wanted to kind of, conceptually we started with this. And there was two aspects which we're really interested in. One was kind of this relationship with light and this obsession with light, and the other one was the relationship to the camera. So as the camera came out, before the camera, a lot of these paintings were oriented around a viewer in a special way, so that the person was unique in the image, and the world was laid out around them. And then when the camera was invented, we started to get these viewerless images, so images without this kind of this hierarchy of kind of religious actions happening around somebody, but more kind of studies of focus and studies of light. And we're living in a time where cameras are also being very redefined. There's lots of new ways of approaching what an image is and how it can be captured. And also, this idea of the special viewer, it's usually like when you think of a screen or when you think of like something that's kind of operated, then it kind of, there's a relationship there between that and this kind of way of working, and then something which is like a viewerless image was something we're interested in. So the principle is, there's a technical principle called light field photography or light field projection, where instead of just using one point in space to capture from, you have many, many points in space, or many, many points in space to project from. And the idea was, if we can get beams of light from all these different points in space, each one of them will be quite dim, but as they collide, they'll make something significant. So this is the first test we did. And the trick was, instead of getting 400 video projectors, we were going to use mirrors to split the light. So if you imagine that the bit of projector that lands on this circle over here, if we hit the left-hand side, then the boom goes this way. And if we're at the bottom, the beam goes this way. So we can use these little mirrors to split one projector into many, so we could have these kind of many points to come out from. And these are just these mirrors you get in the corner of a car park, or a spa, or whatever. And then with a little help from some people who owed us a favor, we cut these up into hexagons and made this like light field lens, this kind of sheet of mirrors. But also we knew that like we're gonna be rendering this thing into the air. We're gonna be making this kind of collection of projection into the air. But we're also going to have this physical counterpoint to that object that's being projected, which is the physical thing. And that's what's going to connect the viewer with the virtual object. So we're very considering how this was constructed and how it appeared as you came close to it. Here you can just see, like when we're in the factory, I'm blowing some smoke across it, and you can start to see what the mirrors do. If you just watch now, you see the peaks that appear, so you can see that there's a lens happening, right? Well, one of the biggest problems with doing a project like this is it's just physically really big, and you can't just put it on a spec sheet and say, please be there, please have it ready when we get there. So all of this has to kind of come apart and be created. Back together. So when we have this constructed, we have this light field lens, this ability to project from many different places. As long as we have some kind of projectors on top, we're going to hit it, right? But actually, we need quite a lot of these projectors. We need like 8 of them, and they need to be really bright. So again, we start to have this problem that they could be very, very expensive. So we discovered this hack where we could take a normal video projector, which has got this component inside, and this component allows it to render color by filtering the light, so that at certain points in time it could project red because the red filter is in front. At other points in time it will project blue. It does this very, very fast to make the image. So what we did was we broke it and threw that part away and then put it back inside the projector. So the projector now thinks it's projecting in color, but it's actually just much brighter in black and white. And we did some tests about this, and you know, what are the results? And kind of what we found was that this is what these steps are for. What we found was like there's a lot of projectors down here, which are like cheap ones, and they're supposed to be used for a classroom or like an office or whatever. And then there's a lot of projectors up here, which are kind of like what we're seeing up there, like an installation projector or a venue projector. And this is a graph of price, money, versus brightness. And what we found was this is like 7 times more expensive, right, to get twice as bright. But if we can move all these to here, then you get the point, right? So that's what this projector hack's all about. And we've got some documentation online about how to do it, and we also do some workshops sometimes on that. Okay, so now we've got these pixels coming out, and they're all landing on these mirrors, and they're all bright enough. The next thing we have to do is we have to know where they all are in space. So you imagine like all these projector pixels come down, hit the mirror, bounce off in some direction or other. And we want this kind of information. We want to know where is the pixel and where is it traveling to. So therefore we can start piecing things together by choosing the right pixels. And we use this technique called structured light, which we first used on literary, but now it's kind of coming through in a different way. And we bounce the light off the mirrors onto a screen and see where it hits the screen. And we do that multiple times, and then we're able to build up this image of where all those rays of light are in space. And to do that, we create this tool called Ruler, which some of you might come to tomorrow. But yes. Is that just a fact, yes? Or? Okay. So tomorrow we're going to do some stuff with Ruler. Partly it's going to be using Ruler and like doing some calibrations, and the other part is like looking inside it and seeing how it's brought together, which is this very like what's it? Very high level kind of abstraction of working with openFrameworks. So here's Ruler. And what you do is you make nodes. So you get a camera node. And inside this node is openFrameworks code. Maybe we'll have focus find it. This is also demonstrating the sound design. So Robert Henke has provided the sound design for the latest version, and this is an example where it'll tell you what's in focus by the sound. Not very good example, sorry. But anyway, the idea is to try and wrap together a lot of what we were making for all these different projects into reusable components. So we were making something that scans, we were making something that calibrates in 3D space, we were making something that's like a database or whatever, and the idea is to kind of make those all into these nodes that we can plug together inside Ruler. And this is all open source and it's all free, and then if you're an openFrameworks developer, you can write your own nodes that take these as inputs, and it's made in kind of an easier way as possible. And also, some people are using it for like show control, so they have like many openFrameworks developers, making like either a drone show or something like this, and then they use Ruler as the 3D world, which everything comes together in. Because there's kind of constraints over how you define what a node is, different developers can more easily collaborate together. Okay, let's get back to the presentation. So yeah, there's workshops on that library will be tomorrow. Okay, so back to light barrier. The kind of story is about like, the light barrier is this boundary between light and material. So something that's, material can't travel like light, right? And there's other aspects of the light barrier, like equals mc squared, which say what happens when you want to transfer material and light. Things that stop becoming physical and start becoming, in a way, digital, or vice versa. So the story is about this form that travels through the light barrier and becomes material. So it's a digital form that becomes material through this technique. So I'm just going to show this video, a couple more slides. kind of some big smoke machines out there. So this was in Chicago, and looking at the hotel window, and I think it's like a laundry or something like that, and it's making quite a lot of smoke. And it goes across the whole city. It's like one big fog machine. We've all seen this kind of thing, right? You know, you can get lasers to go pretty big. This is like 10 watt lasers. So 10 watt lasers are really expensive. If you wanted to make something like light barrier with 10 watt lasers, it would be impossible. 1 watt lasers are really cheap. But thanks so much for listening and watching.
Thank you very much, Elliot. So our last speaker, last but not least, again, is Sarah HOWORKA, a young Austrian artist, and very interesting work. So.
Bonjour Nantes, bonjour Stereolux. I'm going to speak in English too, I hope that's okay. So I'm curious, who here is a programmer? Raise your hand if you write code sometimes. Okay, cool. And then who here is an artist? Raise your hand. Okay. So I always like to ask this question because something very interesting often happens, and it's that people are not sure if they're allowed to raise their hands when it's about being an artist. And a lot of the time, everybody becomes very shy and is kind of anxiously looking around. And to those of you, I would like to recommend an article written by Taeyun Choi, who's also an artist and a friend, and the co-founder of the school that Zach was talking about earlier, the School for Poetic Computation. And in this article he writes, you don't need to look like an artist or sound like an artist or live like an artist, but if you can think like an artist, you are one. And he also writes, you are an artist, I approve and support, and if anybody has a problem with that, you can bring them to me and I will fight back. So I really, really like that. So if you're kind of insecure about that, you should really read that. It's called Some Things I Wish Someone Told Me When I Began Making Art. So if you're into art and technology, from my experience, it can sometimes be difficult to find a place or a community that really supports and encourages that. I have a background in computer science, and I used to work as a full-stack web developer. But I didn't really want to do that for the rest of my life, and so now I'm in art school. So this is my school back in Austria, and it's a very traditional art school, so sometimes that can be difficult too when it comes to accepting computers or electronics or in general software and hardware as an art form. And that's why I think it's so important to have places like Stereolux or also the School for Poetic Computation in New York, where I was able to be a part of last fall. That's why I think it's so important to have these places where you can really be interested in both art and technology, and it's not a contradiction. It's even more awesome, and you can explore this magical intersection of the two fields together. Yeah. So I am one of all of the people talking here so far. I think I'm the newest one, or the youngest openFrameworks programmer, whatever. So I've started openFrameworks 6 months ago, but I would like to show you a couple projects that I did with openFrameworks so that maybe the beginners of you can kind of get an idea where you might be in a couple of months or in a couple of weeks or whatever. So this first project is called Average Face Mirror, and what it does it's a mirror that displays the average of all the faces that have looked into it, so that if we had one here and we all looked into it, it would look like the average of all of our faces. So as you can see, hopefully, yeah, you can see that there is a webcam, and basically how it works is it takes a picture every second, and whenever it detects a face, this face gets rotated and scaled because every face has a different, distance between the eyes and the mouth, and basically I take that face and I make it so that the eye and mouth position are always in the same place. And for that I used OFX Face Tracker by Kyle MacDonald. And I'm very happy to meet him because that's the cool thing about openFrameworks. Everybody makes all these awesome add-ons and shares them on GitHub, and then you can use what they made for your projects, and then maybe you'll meet them at an openFrameworks event and you're going to be like, whoa! So that's really cool. Yeah, so that's basically how it works. I hope it kind of makes sense. So here you can see, wow, can you see those, what's this? That's not on purpose, but it's a beautiful. So the red little dots, I don't know if you can even see them. But on the left you can see, this is what it looks like when there's 39 faces. And then the more faces there are in this result image, the more blurry, like the blurrier it gets, and the more it kind of starts looking like a ghost. So here, this is what it looks like with more than 4,000 faces. Oh, I don't know about the glitch, but it's okay. It's fine. I like it. This little red dots, whatever. Yeah, and the interesting thing about this project, and it's also, I think this is also what I love the most about interactive art in general, is just looking at the people interacting with it. It's always amazing. So this woman, her name was Beauty. She looked into this mirror for 20 minutes because before she came, it has been running for a couple of hours. So the program has been running for a while. So that means that you have to stand even longer if you want your face to make an impact on the average face. Does that make sense? Yeah, and so she stood there for 20 minutes because she really, really wanted to see her face in the average face. And I think that's just so, so beautiful. Yeah, and then this next project, it's an interactive shadow play, which was a commissioned project by an exhibition about cinema history and that kind of stuff. And so they exhibited these beautiful Indonesian shadow puppets. Some of you might know them. They're used in this traditional Indonesian shadow theater. And my idea was to make it an interactive experience. And so for that, I used openFrameworks with skeleton tracking. So I used the Connect and a library called Open and I. And there's also an openFrameworks add-on for that, so that you can basically track people's skeleton data and then do amazing things with that. And so I kind of improvised a photo booth thing so that I would be able to take pictures of it. And I was so scared to break these shadow puppets because they were handmade and hand-colored hundreds of years ago, I think 300 years ago. So I was really, really scared to break them. But it was okay. And then once I had the pictures, I was able to separate the parts and then make it so that these parts rotate according to how the viewer moves. And that was also really interesting to watch how people play with it, because at first they would think it's an animation, but then after a while they realize, oh wait, that's me, and then they kind of dance around, so that's always fun. Yeah, and then maybe a few other experiments. These are not done in openFrameworks. So this one was part of, or kind of originated from a homework that Zachary Lieberman gave us at the School for Poetic Computation. And it's just a drawing tool that leaves kind of it's a generative drawing tool. I don't know if that makes sense. But for some reason I found it very calming to always draw mountains. I don't know. And then this other thing, it's a shy little robot that goes away whenever you try to touch it. So there's a motion sensor in the back that, yeah, whenever it detects any motion, it just triggers the motor to roll away. Yeah, and I really like that. And I would also encourage you all to be open to exploring all kinds of media to tell stories. Because why not use robots? You know, we have so many books and movies, but why not more robots? Or openFrameworks applications. Yeah, and I'm also very, very excited about, or interested in, manipulating video. And I would like you all to join me. Today, very soon, I don't know, I don't think that this time that I said here is correct. I think it's the other way. I think it's from 4 to 6:30. but that's okay. Yeah, and the goals for the workshop today are: number one, get excited about openFrameworks. Have as much fun as possible with a few lines of code. And what's the third one? Oh man, I think I had a really good goal. Maybe it'll come to me. But yeah, basically just making weird things with video in 2.5 hours and see where it takes us. So yeah, you're all welcome to join me. It's across the street. I think we're going to go there all together. But yeah, thank you.